Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you both, first of all, the moderator of this session, breaking news anchor for MSNBC and NBC. And of course, the moment he walks in here, you're going to say, damn, so cool that he's here, Mr. Richard Louie, to moderate the session. Thank you for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you an actor and a partner at NGL Me Too, our dear friend, John Leguizamo.
Thank you. Yes.
John Leguizamo!
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Oh!
What's up? How's everybody doing?
Wow!
How you doing?
Yeah.
You doing good?
Doing a lot better now.
You think?
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad.
Hey, so, this is an important gathering, as you know, John. You and I were talking about this and the importance of trying to get fair share.
Yes, fair share.
Why are you here? What's the big idea?
Well, fair share is very important to me.
Yeah.
Multiculturalism is very important to me. Inclusivity is very important to me.
Yeah.
Those are big issues for me. I think we need to have more inclusion.
Yeah.
I love what I'm seeing. I love what I'm seeing, the changes that are happening in the world, the changes that are happening in the media landscape and movies and streaming. But I want more. I still want more. I still want to see more inclusion because things get better when you have more diversity. They get better. They're more exciting. They're more interesting. It's the way I grew up in New York City, in LA, in Chicago, in Miami. Things are richer when there's multiculturalism.
And you are a student of history.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little more than that. And, I, again, loved what you did on Netflix when you were talking about Latin history. That was so important, right? And those of you who saw it, that was, when you look at Latino history, so important, right? Tell us about your arc in this space. Like, how are we doing in the fair share? Where do we come from? Where do you think we're going in this idea of addressing all the important parts of what might be seen as multicultural?
Well, when I did Latin History for Morons, that's the name of the show. Thank you. Now you recognize it, yeah. It was incredible to me that, well, speaking of Latin people, I know my black brothers and sisters, my Asian brothers and sisters have been here forever. Yeah. We've been here for 500 years, largest ethnic group, oldest ethnic group, aside from Native Americans, and we're Native American as well.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
we conquered ourselves. And we're recovering from that. It's going to take a while. Colonialism is hard to, get over. But the fact that our history isn't in history textbooks, isn't being told in movies, isn't being told in period pieces and the Discovery Channel, the History Channel is incredible because then you don't have history. You have a fiction, sort of, a fairy tale, because you're not including all the other contributions that happened. And you need to include that. So that was my whole thing with Latin History for Morons, is to get my side of the history being that was not being told, the horrors that happened to Latin people in this country, and the beautiful things that we contributed. Like the captcha code was invented by a Latin person. The hand sanitizer was invented by a Latin person. The color TV, the birth control pill. I'm sorry, but we did. But it helps. Yeah.
In the last 3 years, how have we been doing broadly in the same conversation, whether it happens to be Latin people or the other groups that are underrepresented? How have we been doing the last 3 years? And then I'm going to ask you about how we looking for the future.
Well, I love what I saw. Much more Asian inclusion, much more Black inclusion, some Native American. I saw some effort.
Yeah, right.
There was a lot of great optics. I think I saw a lot of optics.
And that's a start, isn't it?
It is a start, but it sets me up a little bit, and then I get a little disappointed when I don't see the numbers coming through,
That's right.
Or things sustaining, like with all the sort of cleansing in Hollywood now in terms of downsizing, a lot of the people that were let off were people of color, Asian, Latin, and Black executives. And those were the people that I was hoping and rooting for because I know they get my story.
Yeah.
My Asian brothers and my Black brothers and my Hispanic brothers and sisters understand my story, understand my struggle, and they give me the boost that I need. You know, so I was sad to see them go. So I don't know what's going to come
Yeah.
next after that, because that was a big sort of amputation of multiculturalism.
How do the groups, in your experience, work together? You've always been an intersectional cultural leader. You've always worked with other groups. You've always addressed other groups. And all of your work that we've enjoyed over the years, you've been so inclusive.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for other groups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I stand here because of Spike Lee. Spike Lee gave me the chance to be the lead in his movie. Nobody was giving me that opportunity. You know what I mean? Ava DuVernay put me in her work. I'm here because of my Jewish brothers and sisters who gave me opportunities when other people wouldn't give me opportunities. Because, you know, when I was coming up, it was crazy because, you know, first of all, my parents were like, "You don't want to be an actor. We didn't come to this country for you to be worse than us." And I was like, but I like acting. I know there are no people who look like me, and I probably have no opportunities, but I want to try it. Let me have a shot. And then here I am in college, you know, great actors, you know, D.B. Sweeney, Andrew McCarthy, and they're going to 5 auditions a day. I'm going to 1 every 5 months. And I'm like, I didn't understand that. Wait a minute, we're studying. I'm paying the same tuition. I'm as good as they are. But my opportunities, when you look at the cast breakdown back then, it said white actor, white male.
Right there in black and white.
Like if it was Jim Crow in my face, and they wouldn't see me. They would not see a Latin brother. They would not see a black brother or Asian. They would not. They would only see white actors, and that's what I saw every day in the breakdown.
Yeah.
And it was subliminal, you know, and it becomes internalized.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. And how do you break out of that? So eventually, you know, I see multiculturalism in New York City. I grew up in the most multicultural, diverse place in the world, Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and it still is. And those people boosted me, and I boost them back, you know, and that's how we help each other, and we bring each other up. We all rise together.
Yeah, when you were saying what they were looking for, and it didn't say we're looking for John Leguizamo, an individual who's both Latino and indigenous, that was sort of like they're looking for everything else. But
Right.
I make the same joke. There is no call to my agent going, we need an Asian male to anchor a show. That doesn't happen.
Right. It doesn't exist.
You don't get that.
No, that's spaced. You know, I did get an audition every 5 months for a drug dealer, a murderer, a killer, or some kind of subservient role. That did exist every 5 months, but they were not award-winning roles. They were menial roles, and they were small, and they were not going to get my career to the next space. Because so what happens is a catch-22. How do you get actors of color to be award-winning? You have to give them roles that are award-winning, and that's what needs to happen.
Now, on the outside of all of this is how culture is changing right across the country, and as you've been a person that has been part of leading that as well as a student of it, advertising is very important. The messages that we see and across all the different distribution channels that we do, whether it's our phone or what have you, TV and movies, you know the numbers here. The amount of money going towards, again, diverse-owned and targeted entities, super low. Like we're talking
1.2%.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
1.2%. Yeah.
Well, I wonder what's in the other hand is really what it.
That's not for you. That's for later.
How? I mean, what's your reflection on that? That's ridiculous. It should be like 50%, shouldn't it be?
Well, let's say white people are 59.8% of the population. So 40%. Let's say 40%.
Okay, 40. Okay, we'll go 40.
I'll take 40. I'll take 39. I'll take 38. I'll take 20%. I'll take 15%. I'll take anything. I'll take anything more than 1.2% because you know what I mean. With all the statistics, I'm going to speak about Latin people because it's the numbers that I know mostly.
Sure, yeah.
So we contribute $2.8 trillion to the U.S. economy yearly. In the United States, if we were our own country, we'd be the 5th largest country in the world. But we're getting 1.2%. That's not fair share, you know what I mean? And we over-index everywhere, 30% of the box office. $4 billion in streaming in the U.S. alone. I'm not talking about Latin America or internet. I'm talking about in the U.S. alone. We need to see that back. And the great thing was now that we have all these metrics, that's when people of color, Black and Asian and Latin people win, and indigenous people, and when we have metrics. And now that they're starting to measure everything a lot more, we can see what's going on. Because when I came up,
Yeah.
there weren't
Right.
any Nielsen boxes in Asian homes. There were very few in Latin homes, very few in Black homes.
Right.
So when I put up my show, House of Buggin', there was no way I would ever know that if Latin person or Black person or Asian person saw my show. So how do you measure that success? You can't, because they were watching, but nobody was in there. Nobody had a Nielsen in their house. You need metrics, and now with Nielsen coming out, that on Netflix, Latin people go to Latin content with a Latin star, with Latin culture, with Latin language. They go to that. That's huge. So we do go, because there were executives back in the day when I was pitching for 4 decades. I know I look younger because brown don't break down.
Brown don't frown.
yeah, brown don't frown. That's mine too.
Yep. You got it all.
Asian
Yep.
don't raisin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And of course, we got Black don't crack.
Right,
so
right. That's classic. That's
there
classic.
you go. That's the OG.
yeah, that's the OG of it all. Now I lost my point. What
That's
was
okay. That's all right. We got it all there.
okay.
Yeah. Hey, so one of the things you say often is in language, in culture, in context.
Right.
And that's kind of your mantra in all of your projects and what you do. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I love to put multiculturalism in my projects and my stories, because the way I grew up, it's the world that I live in.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
reflects reality. I mean, I don't know how executives leave LA, leave their offices, and go into the real world and go, this is the real world and this is movies. It's like movies are 20 years behind the reality that I see in the streets in New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, Dallas, Houston. I mean, that's not the reality I'm seeing. I want to see that. I want to see the exact reality.
You know, that's part of the conversation. You brought up Latin History for Morons. How did you get that greenlit?
A good question, right?
Yeah.
Well, I found a space that was easier for me, safer for me, that gave me my opportunities my whole life, and it was theater. Even though theater is not very inclusive, it was a space because it was less financial risk. So I could find these off-Broadway homes that would put my show up, and then people would come, and it became, you know, award-winning and huge hits. And so that's what happened with Latin History for Morons. I did it in comedy clubs. I did it across America, and then I did it at Berkeley, and I won awards, and then La Jolla, and then I went to Broadway with it and won a Tony for it. And because there's an audience out there. I mean, when I travel across America, I mean, there's a huge Latin audience. I mean, the Latin audience is massive. I mean, there's Fluffy sold out Dodger Stadium. There's not one white artist that ever sold out Dodger Stadium. Bad Bunny sold out Yankee Stadium 2 nights in a row. Nobody can do that. I mean, it's crazy. The audience is out there. They're hungry. They want to see themselves. They want to see themselves reflected. They want to see other people of color reflected. They want to see Black people, Asian people, and I do want to see my brothers and sisters that are white as well, you know, but let's include everybody.
Yeah. I mean, me wearing my Asian American and as well indigenous hat for a moment, I loved watching your Latin History for Morons. I saw a little bit of me in everything you were saying.
I'm glad.
Even though, you know, we're different, but we're the same, right? And that's so important. You know, in culture, can you do too much in culture?
How can you do too much in culture? I don't think so. I mean,
You know what I mean? So some folks will go, oh gosh, I maybe that's too much for me. They might say it out loud, but that's too much for me.
then you would never go see foreign films. I mean, foreign films have been a huge staple of American cinema, and they're very in culture.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to read subtitles. That's how in culture they are. You know, I don't think you can be too in culture. I mean, obviously you can do great commercial work as well. I mean, Latin History for Morons was a commercial piece. It was very in culture, but it was also very accessible and universal, because great storytelling is always going to be universal.
Yeah. And you are, in terms of being prolific, we're talking about, you know, again, being on Broadway, we're talking about the series that we have been watching streaming. you also have something else coming. I'm not saying this just because I work for MSNBC, but with MSNBC Films, you have another series that got greenlit. Again, how did you get that done? And tell us about the series.
Well, Cesar, who runs MSNBC now, gave the green light to our show. It's called Leguizamo Does America, and I travel across 6 cities this season, searching for Latin culture, you know. And I went to Chicago, New York, D.C., Miami, Puerto Rico, and L.A.
Yeah.
And I met with artists, painters, dancers, musicians, chefs, restaurateurs, politicians, activists, and I hung out with them. I asked them about the secrets of how they made it, and that's what the show's about.
What do you think to our topic and reason for gathering here at Growth Front, and the idea of, hey, you have to look at these different, not only segments, but also be inclusive of those segments. What do you think your series is saying about that idea of inclusivity as you're looking at Latin folks all across the country?
Well, you know, within the Latin diaspora, we're not monolithic, you know what I mean?
That's right.
So we have our Afro-Latinos. We included our Afro-Latinos. Of course, we got to represent. They gave us a lot of our culture. We have our indigenous Latinos. We have our white Latinos, you know. So, and we have our Asian Latinos as well, you know. We have diversity. I mean, Nobu is Peruvian food that nobody ever told us that it was Peruvian food, but it's Asian Peruvian food.
Ah.
Yeah. So, you know.
Does Nobu know this?
I think he did. He didn't want us to know, but yeah. He kept it from us.
You say Holly wouldn't.
Yes.
Holly wouldn't. What is that?
Holly wouldn't was, and still kind of is, when you saw all the Oscar nominations, you just didn't see that much diversity. It was just a place that wasn't very inclusive, man. You know, I mean, it just wasn't, and it was really hard to break in for all of us. Difficult to sustain. I've been pitching stories and trying to produce for 4 decades, and it was impossible. I mean, they would never greenlight anything, no matter how well written. You could write like Shakespeare, you could write like William Goldman, you could write like the greatest writer. They're not going to greenlight it. You could be as talented as Brando, as Meryl Streep, and they're not going to greenlight it with your Latin actor or your actor of color. They just were not going to, no matter. But it was a big disillusionment for me, because I thought America was a meritocracy. I thought America was this idealistic place where the American dream belonged to everyone. And then I started to realize it doesn't really trickle down like that.
It's not that simple.
No.
That time, from 1 to 10, 1 being really low, 10 being really great, what would you give that time with the idea?
I mean, back in the day?
Yeah. What
the Hollywooden days?
Yeah. What would you give it?
Oh my God.
What would you give it, 1 or 2?
I mean, representation was like less than 1%. I mean, it was really bad. I mean, and when I mean representation, I don't mean just in front of the camera.
Right.
I mean behind the camera. I mean executives. I mean all of it. I mean, that's the only way you get real fair share.
So the market, you gave it a 1 back then. What would you give it in the last 3 years?
I would say maybe 3 or 4.
3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 or 4. I mean, it definitely moved up, and I see improvement. I see effort. I see outreach. I see all the gestures.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the inclusivity. I have seen some of it. I mean, they're really making an effort, and I appreciate that, and I feel that, you know, and I know everybody else does too.
Yeah.
But it can still be more. It's still not. I mean, fair should be like equal representation, I believe, anyway. I mean, I don't know if that's a real thing, maybe in a perfect world, but if white people are 60% and Latin people are 20%, I'd like to be 20% of the executives, 20% of the stories, 20% of the faces in front of the camera, behind the camera. You know, that's what I'd like.
So from the perspective of the marketers in the room, and they are trying to understand the Latino Hispanic space, the multicultural space in general, better. What's the lesson we don't have time for a full one-man show, but I mean, what would be the, hey, you know, consider this?
What is the rephrase it? Rephrase
Yeah.
it.
So for the marketers in
Yeah.
the room, they're going, well, I want to learn more about why it's so important. I know that
To
there's
see
good
ourselves?
ROI. Yeah. To see, again, when I'm addressing and going out and buying advertising, or I'm allotting advertising space or messaging space, it's important to go to these particular voices, whether they are in community or owned, or they're targeting these different communities of color.
Yeah.
What is it you want to tell them to say, hey, yeah, you didn't know this about the benefit of targeting these communities of color this way?
Well, the loyalty. I mean, the loyalty to brands. That's incredible. I mean, I'm sure the Black community and the Asian community are as loyal. Latin people are incredibly loyal. Once they have a certain make, a product, label, it becomes this sort of their team.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And they'll take one for the team. So there's a loyalty. If when you see yourself represented, you will go to that. I go to dealers more often than not that are Latino dealers.
Right.
I will work with people mostly sometimes because they are Latino, on purpose sometimes. Sometimes just it's my natural gravitation. And I will, obviously I will go to the best, who's ever the best at whatever the field is. But, people of color will go to if they see themselves represented. And then that's a big ad buy right there.
You're right. I mean, I was thinking about that, John. You're right. When I see that a brand has associated either a face like yours or mine in there, I'm like, oh. So, I did for fun. On YouTube, I said, I'm Latino.
Yeah.
And I'm getting all these great advertisements from these brands, and I'm going, see? They're talking, right? They're talking. And I may not understand all the words, but I'm like, oh, that brand is intentional.
Yeah. And it works, and it pays off. It definitely does. And I think that's the importance of putting money into multicultural ads.
Yeah. The title of our conversation is Lack of Intent in the Market. Do you believe, you said the last 3 years, you're seeing more faces or action, not actions. You're seeing the right face time, I guess is what you're telling me. But what about the intent of the market? Do you think they're going to leave it there? What's your view on that?
Well, I don't know what their intent is, but I know I'd like the intent to continue growing and to be inclusive. I love seeing, Asian faces in commercials and Latin faces and indigenous faces.
Do you do the same thing? Do you say your API?
Oh my God, yeah. Whenever I walk in a room, I can't help but go, there's a Latin face, there's a Latin executive, there's a Black executive, there's an Asian executive. My brain immediately looks for the faces of color. And not just the Latin faces. I look for all the faces of color. How many of them are women? It's just a thing I do when I walk into a corporate office. And, I like to see a lot more.
Hey, the beauty of your craft, and you have many different skills, I'll just focus on your comedic craft, is you can say things I can't and nobody else can say in this room. And we've heard him say it, right?
I didn't say anything untoward.
No.
I didn't say anything cancelable.
But what would you say about where we are when it comes to race in America today? What are you saying right now about race in America?
Well, I think we're at a big turning point in America. I think Black Lives Matter and COVID somehow was an intersection that brought a lot of good and a lot of attention because we were all home and we were able to focus and see what was really going on in America and look at ourselves. It was like a pause button. And we got a chance to look at ourselves and see that we could do better. It was a wake-up call to a call to action. Let's do better. Let's do better for our communities, for all the people. And I think we all felt that. I marched in Black Lives Matter. My kids did too. And it felt so good to stand up for other people, for other groups, and for inclusivity. I don't know. I felt like this was a time for change. Obviously, there's going to be growing pains.
Yeah.
Like Florida. Florida's a growing pain right now. A growing pain in my, because to cancel AP studies for Black studies is, what kind of country? It feels like a fascist move. It feels so, especially do it in Black History Month, felt so offensive. And why? Why? Understanding more, learning more makes us all much better, makes us progress further, makes us become a stronger country. creates the fabric tighter, instead of canceling people's books and taking out libraries and making teachers afraid to teach. I mean, that's not a modern country, that the America that I grew up in. I mean, it was a tough America, but it wasn't that like that, in your face.
Yeah, and we just, as all of you know, finished Black History Month. We said the first day of the month now. Do we need Black history for morons?
Of course we do. We need Black history to be in textbooks. We need it, what happened in this country to be in textbooks, to be in movies. It needs to be out there. It needs to be told. It needs to be vented as Asian contributions, Asian morons for
I think
history.
he's you all, right? We all want him to do a couple more. I think
yeah.
that, and bring in the right collabs, right?
Oh
Along
yeah,
the
you
way.
need I need some experts to come with me and help me out, so I don't trip on myself.
All right, that's an ask. Anybody, on the side.
please.
His posse's right over here if you want to talk about that. What conversation? Again, I go back. I feel so lucky to be sitting with John, a person that.
Oh, thank you, man. I feel the same.
Yeah, because you talk with so many. You just know what's happening when on this very topic. What's a conversation that makes you feel good that we're going to be in a better time, where this dynamic of difficulty that we've talked about in different ways today is getting better? What's a conversation?
This right here makes me feel great that this is happening, that we're having these conversations, that we have a platform for it, that we're asking the serious questions, that we're getting the serious answers. This is it. This is it, man. This is the change that I've been wanting.
What do you tell? You got a son, right?
Yes, and a daughter.
And a daughter. What do you tell both of them about all of this? What do you tell them?
Well, it's parsed out through a lot of different, weekends and dinners.
Can you see John talking to his kids? I mean,
Yeah, well, they stopped listening after a while. They tune me out with good reason. That's what they're supposed to do. Obviously, I brought up my kids very aware of respect for culture, for different cultures, respect for their own identities, that they're half Jewish, half Latino. I'm very proud of their heritage, and I celebrate both sides of it, and I make them proud of being indigenous and of being part Black, Afro-Latino. I put that on them, and kids are much better than we were, man. I feel like my kids and all their friends are so much more savvy, so much more inclusive, and open. They're much more open than we ever were, or the neighborhoods we grew up in.
because of good parenting.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope I did something right.
Yeah, I think he did.
It's not over yet, so.
He did a lot of things right. Ladies and gentlemen, John Leguizamo.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.
What a
that was
pleasure, man.
great.
Thank you.
Really awesome.
Thank you.
Really, please.
Together, here we go.